Hey guys, Interjection here, and today we have one of the most highly anticipated group stage matches of the tournament so far. H2O playing as India versus Darwin Giovanni as Russia. Two very, very big names indeed, both of which have actually held the title of highest ELO rating in Age of Empires 3, the Asian Dynasties. Of course, H2O among one of the old pros coming back to this game just to compete in PKT4, who held that title long ago back in his day. Darwin Giovanni, though, now holds the title, or at least he did, literally just up until a few days ago when H2O took it back from him. This guy clearly means business, and why wouldn't he mean business? Of course, this tournament is worth $1,800, and here we see the Indian player. Of course, H2O has found himself a treasure worth 50 wood. All he needs to do is kill both of these treasure guardians here and then collect it up with his explorer, and 50 wood will be added to his inventory. And of course, that is a very nice treasure for India because their settlers do not cost any food, and instead their settlers cost wood. They also have that early wood requirement of needing to build a house as well, which makes India a very wood-heavy civilization early on and for the rest of the game, and you might consider that a big disadvantage since wood is a much slower gathering resource relative to the other resources. Of course, you would gather 0.83 food per second from a bison, from huntable animals generally, but you only collect a 0.5 wood from a tree, and of course that adds up very quickly over time. And wood is not so good if it is your primary resource. Of course, though, India do get the Age 1 and Age 2 market upgrades absolutely free from the very beginning of the game for wood cutting. So it's not such a big deal. That is a 15% bonus straight away from the start of the game. Of course, we have to remember these are the Asian wood cutting upgrades, not the European ones, so it is 15%. They also get a hidden bonus, which increases the amount of wood you can get from a single tree. Here it says the wood, you get 300 out of it, but actually India would get 450 wood out of a tree. They get a 50% bonus to the amount of wood they can get from a tree, which is quite nice. That does make your starting resources, though, and the mango groves, which we might see a little bit later on, last longer than you might expect them to, which of course is very nice if you're being pressured. You want those starting resources to last as long as possible, when in later on it might be more difficult to reach out to the ones not in your base. Here, though, we see the Indian player, of course, using both of his exploring monks, his explorers, to kill 3 coyotes almost simultaneously. And the reason he was able to kill them so easily is because, of course, these do 4 damage, area 2, and they have a ×3 multiplier versus Treasure Guardians, so they're actually much stronger against Treasure Guardians than other units, though. So we'll switch over to Darwin, and we will see what he is up to. His Explorer here, scouting through the Indian player's base, and of course he only gets 1 exploring unit, meaning that it is much more difficult for him to scout the map, and that does kind of affect his treasure collecting. That is the problem with Russia, they only get this 1 guy, and as we can see here, he's only managed to find 50 coin, and of course that is a starting treasure in your base, which doesn't have any guardians around it, which you need to kill here, though getting his second treasure, killing a coyote there with his crack shot in the Indian player's base, stealing 30 food from him, which is nice. But the Indian player has found, obviously, 50 wood, he's found 50 coin as well, another 40 coin, 80 food as well. H2O is stacking up the treasures, and really Darwin has not found many at all, somewhat putting him at a disadvantage already. If we take a look at the treasures H2O found, we know he found 80 food just here, meaning that H2O will be hitting the colonial age a little bit sooner than he normally would, increasing the competitiveness of whatever he decides to do. Darwin here now clicking up as well. He's gone up with 14 settlers, which is obviously a lower amount of settlers than you might normally choose to go up with. Obviously, Russia, their settlers train in batches of 3, so you really do have to choose between 14 or 17, and of course, 14 gonna get there a little bit quickly and obviously be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know if you noticed, but Darwin actually left one of his starting wood crates on the floor, and that is because he didn't want to use the settler gather time to collect it up early on. He might as well have had that settler collecting food, and then he would be able to hit the colonial age a little bit more soon, and then be a little bit more aggressive, as we can see here, putting up a forward blockhouse center map from which he will start training units the moment he hits Age 2. Of course, Russia is one of the only civilizations in the game that can build a barracks in Age 1, and their barracks is called a blockhouse. We'll switch over to the other player, obviously H2O. But before we do, we see here that Darwin is going up with the Quartermaster, who will grant him 400 wood upon aging up. And actually over here, Darwin has found 140 food, which is a very nice treasure indeed. But if only he had found that before he had started aging up, because obviously then he would be able to get age 2 in the production queue a little bit sooner, and obviously hit up a little bit more quickly, and certainly mitigate that treasure disadvantage we saw where H2O certainly had more treasures than he did. We will switch back to H2O now, and we see that he also is about to reach age 2 through the Agrifort, which also gives you 2 sepoys. Of course, India do not research their age up, instead they build it. Obviously, once the Agrifort is complete, they hit age 2. I'm saying this for the benefit of people who perhaps do not play Age of Empires 3, and instead just watch it. There's actually quite a few of those people, considering, well, I must really thank ZeroEmpires for linking my channel on his YouTube page. Links are in the description, but back to this game. Thank you very much, Zach. Darwin Giovanni here, the Russian player, adding in some colonial age pressure quick and fast. Here is his first batch of military units, 10 Strelets plus his Explorer, bringing down that settler, reducing the economic capability for H2O. H2O responding with his 2 War Elephant monks. Here, 5 Cossacks, Russia's first home city shipment in age 2, joining the fight. Military units to add even more pressure. These War Elephants, though, obviously are very tanky, and they do decent damage. They have 4 damage area 2, which isn't bad at all, especially when they're being backed up by a town centre with 10 settlers in it, and also an Agrifort, which does 25 ranged damage. He also had 2 sepoys, which he aged up with. Here, India responding to all of this aggression by adding in some irregulars, which of course are the Minutemen type unit for India. They are units which will slowly lose HP over time until they have just 1 hit point left, and as you can see, they are losing hit points, and Darwin just doesn't want to fight that because there's no point. He might as well come back once those units have lost all of their hit points. Here we see 13 Strelets, his second age 2 shipment, more military units, and all-in aggression here to try and do as much damage to the Indian player as he can early on. We will see how that turns out for him. On the other hand, though, if we switch over to H2O, the Indian player, we can see that, well, his first shipment was Distributivism, which grants him a 1.25 wood per second trickle for the entire rest of the game. In fact, both players' first shipment would have been that, because both civilizations here cannot send settlers from their home city, and that is obviously the next best thing, a wood trickle. And his second shipment here was 600 wood, and with that wood, it looks like he's building a stable with a funny Indian name, and also a consulate. Both buildings cost 200 wood. There's a lot of wood. Here, though, Darwin coming in again, killing a settler there. Is he going to get another settler? 2 settlers down. Is he going to bring down a 3rd settler? Yes, he is. H2O clearly out of practice, one of these old pros coming back to the game, but not being able to garrison those settlers there. Darwin now getting his units out of here because he would be foolish to stay in. Of course, the town centre can do very good damage. The Agrifort does good damage, and obviously H2O does have Gurkhas, which are essentially skirmishers. And of course, skirmishers drastically outrange everything that Darwin Giovanni has, and they also have a 16 ranged attack, which is multiplied by 2 versus the musketeers here, so of course do very good damage. They can shoot as they are doing here, and then if Darwin were to run towards them to shoot the Gurkhas back, he could just run away, shoot, and then not actually take any damage himself. Skirmishers are of course a Fortress Age unit, and India is in Age 2. India is just one of those lame OP Imber BS civs that gets, obviously, Fortress Age style units in Age 2. As you can see here, he's training a Zambarak from his Sable, and that is actually a Dragoon type unit, which is also a Fortress Age unit, which does obviously good damage versus cavalry. It is a ranged cavalry unit that moves very quickly. I do think now is a good time to have an objective look at the civilizations and where they are going. As we can see here, he has allied himself with the Ottoman at the consulate, which of course gives him the access to what I believe is a settler shipment. Whether he has sent it or not, I'm unsure. But essentially you get 3 settlers for 300 export, and as we saw, he shipped 300 export, so it's essentially a 3 settler shipment, which is very nice indeed, since India cannot send settlers from their home city. They also receive a settler every time they receive a shipment. He's gone with a market, an early one, so he's gotten the economic upgrades there, and he's now sending foreign logging, just going full eco here, just full boom versus what Darwin is doing. We'll switch over to Darwin and see what he is up to. Foreign logging, by the way, though, for those who don't know, grants you a 2.35 wood per second trickle for the rest of the game, and that would be in addition to distributivism, which is already sent a 1.25 wood per second trickle as well. Anyway, Darwin Giovanni here, he had a very aggressive start, obviously sending 5 Cossacks, followed by 13 Strelets, and was in H2O's base doing good damage, managed to kill like 4 settlers, and now he has sent 700 wood. Of course, you can't go on forever, you can't just keep pushing and keep pushing. I think many players at lower levels fail to understand the concept of a rush and why you need to do it. What you're aiming to do is economic damage early on, to kind of stop them, stunt them at the beginning of the game. But if you continue to push, you're just going to burn yourself out and kind of die. Really, you need to, at some point, stop pushing, fall back, and think about your economy. And as you can see here, he sent 700 wood, and at the market got an amalgamation, which increases coin collecting by 20%. I imagine he will also have steel traps, and obviously hunting dogs and placer mines, which increases, obviously, coin and food gathering up to 30%, all of those upgrades combined in total. He is now sending spice trade as his next shipment, which also increases the work rate of settlers on huntable animals by 20% as well. Just going very heavy eco here after that push, and I think, you know, he did good damage, but will it be enough to kind of, well, will it be enough to win the game for him? Of course, the score at the moment is very, very even. 102 to H2O, 104 to Darwin Giovanni, and I will switch over to H2O. But the thing is, India versus Russia, that is a very tough matchup for Russia, so I think Darwin has his work cut out if he's going to win this. Here we see, obviously, Ottoman Expeditionary Company being sent from the consulate, which costs 400 export, and he is also sending 4 sours from his home city. Of course, he was very boom heavy to begin with, distributivism followed by 600 wood, market upgrades, 300 export, obviously the settlers from the consulate, and then the foreign logging trickle as well. Here it looks like the fight is about to get going, but obviously H2O, boom heavy first, followed by military afterwards. Darwin was kind of the other way around. That blockhouse going down, and in terms of military unit composition here, I think that H2O might have an advantage over him. Of course, Darwin has musketeers, which do good damage versus cavalry. They're going into hand combat there because, of course, they do 10 times 3 versus cavalry in hand mode, but quickly switching back to ranged mode because H2O noticed and ran them away. But here, being obviously very back and forth with the cavalry, he has Gurkhas in the back, which do very good damage against heavy infantry, such as the musketeer. In fact, I believe it is exactly 16 times 2. Running out of musketeers quickly, and then there will be nothing, no more anti-cavalry to protect his strelets, which of course are very weak to cavalry. Of course, sending the 3 hussars, the Gardiner hussars from the consulate, and also the 4 sours from his home city was a very nice thing to combine and gave him the edge he needed at this moment in time. We see more cavalry from Darwin entering the fight. We'll switch over to him, and as you can see, he sent his 4 Cossack shipment to help defend and has clearly been training them as well. The defending side calling his Minutemen here. He must feel very pressured indeed. Take a look at the size of H2O's army. I do think he would be able to defend this, but the problem is he's just about to run out of food. Of course, these cows here, the only source of food he has left. Down here, the huntable animals a little bit too far away from his base. We could say that Darwin hasn't been keeping on top of his herding. Of course, you can shoot the animals in the direction of your town center. That isn't the point, though. The situation is, if Darwin had easier access to his food, then I'm fairly sure he could defend this onslaught much more easily, though, as I said earlier, this civilization matchup is a tough one. India do have access to those Fortress Age style units in Age 2, which of course are very specific counters to what Darwin has, and are actually very hard to deal with for any civilization, especially if you are not in the Fortress Age yourself. Darwin having one final effort to push H2O off him using his settlers in the fight. Of course, they soak up a lot of damage, but here we are though. GG, H2O takes the win against the strongest player in his group, though I suspect we have not seen the last of either of these two in this tournament. Everybody type GG into the comments section below because we do that at the end of a game. Why not on YouTube? I'm trying to start this off as a general thing. If you would like to see more videos from me and coverage of this tournament as it unfolds, then subscribe to this channel and also check the links in the description. There are others who cast Age of Empires 3 on YouTube, such as Mike21 Desu, VeniVidiVCW, PKClan.net, and many, many more. They're all in the description. And finally, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this game, and if you did, do give it a good thumbing down below. That actually helps me out a lot more than you might think it does. My name is Interjection, and I will see you next time. And now it looks like this Dutch player is going to do a little bit of pushing, which is fairly unusual for Dutch players. They often like to obviously build all 4 of their banks or 3 of their banks and then go up to the fortress age quite quickly. Today, though, this Dutch player being super aggressive